Thank you very much, Innkeeper, and welcome everybody to the tavern. We have finished our third best of 7 for today. My name is Frodan, and I'm joined by Brian Kibler. Brian, why don't we just go ahead and reflect on what we just watched for the past couple of series. We had Omega Zero dropping a nail-biting 2.5-hour match. Dragon Priest kept losing and losing, finally being able to get over the hump. What went wrong in that series, in your opinion?
I mean, that series was incredibly close the entire way through. Both games 1 and 2, Omega Zero was 1 damage away from being able to close out the game. And then Samuel Sao was able to crawl up to a 3-0 lead, and Omega Zero just starts climbing back one game at a time. And after that Yogg-Saron, it looked like it might go his way. And I think there may have been some decisions he could have made differently that would have changed the outcome. But ultimately, Samuel Sao was able to just deal with everything in his deck at the end.
Yeah, I think, just a little bit of impatience from Omega Zero. Just the way he flame strike, the way he uses resources could have maybe cost him that game. Of course, it's easy for us to say because we've been watching, but being in his position, it's much more difficult. Pavel also has dropped his series too, so we have 2 players who were expected to perhaps go into the winners match at the very least, being upset here. I think that just goes to show you that you can't get comfortable at any point in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tournament full of a lot of very talented players. And, as we've seen, even underdogs who people really haven't heard of have the opportunity to upset many of the favorites.
All right, well, we have a lot of great matches coming up for you guys. Now, Brian, looking forward to how D develops here. I think one thing to keep in mind is just the fact that all these players are pretty much playing the same thing, but kind of slightly different decks. How do you think that's going to plan out for the rest of the day here?
Well, one thing that's actually really interesting is that there are no 2 players with identical decks. There are no 2 players with absolutely the same lineup with the same archetypes. But there are a wide variation of, even within archetypes, we've seen, Rogue, for instance. We've seen Miracle Rogue, we've seen Curator Rogue, we've also even seen Stealth Rogue, so lots of variation.
Absolutely. So next match coming up, GreenSheep versus Tarei. A matchup between 2 people who've been to BlizzCon, and I think their experience and composure can really help them out here. Have you got a chance to look at their lineups at all and see who is going to be the person that's favored on paper?
GreenSheep has one of the more interesting lineups in the event. He has a very aggressive lineup compared to most of the rest of the field. So it'll be interesting to see with the Aggro Shaman. We see the list up here. He's playing the Aggro Shaman and Pirate Warrior and Tempo Mage. And wow, this is actually one of the first times we've seen in the entire tournament that Pirate Warrior was available in a matchup and was not banned. So GreenSheep has his Tempo Mage banned away by Tarei, while Tarei has his Reno Mage banned away by GreenSheep. And I think this is perhaps an indication of the goals of the different lineups. Specifically, GreenSheep is playing the triple aggro lineup, and often many of the lineups are much more mid-range or much more control-focused, so it's harder to ban away the aggressive deck. And with the sort of aggro focus, he wants to get rid of the Reno Mage from Tarei.
All right, well, I believe it's time to go ahead and meet the players of our 4th match. The first player hailing from the United States of America, please welcome Tarei. And his opponent from the United Kingdom, please welcome GreenSheep.
Is your battery better?
It's go time! GreenSheep versus Tarei!
My first match is against Tarei. I'm feeling a bit wishy-washy about this match because he's a really tough player and his lineup lines up well against mine.
I see myself being fairly favored versus GreenSheep because his strategies are very aggressive and mine are more anti-aggressive.
In practice, I've played against Tarei's lineup a lot. I feel like I'm quite unfavored in that matchup.
So in a way, it worked out for me that we just happened to play each other.
Yesterday, I played against Tarei himself.
We did like a small practice against each other.
I managed to actually beat him, so I'm not sure how it'll plan out, but we'll just see what happens on the day.
I predict the first match will probably go 4-2 or 4-1 in my favor.
GreenSheep versus Tarei! Let's go!
Hello everyone, we are ready to get into GreenSheep versus Tarei, and I am Raven, joined with Saul, of course, and everyone, TJ, We thought they were going to be casting the whole day at that rate, but we have swapped it out onto us to give them a bit of a break. So they'll be resting in the back, ready for their next series later on.
Yeah, feet up, cup of coffee, job well done from those two. Absolute marathon series. But now we have two of the players with the largest wealth of HCT and BlizzCon World Championship experience behind them. Tarei and our compatriot from the United Kingdom, GreenSheep. And I think it's been set up very well. GreenSheep, classical aggro player, one of the innovators of a lot of the most aggressive decks in the game. Face Hunter was a deck that he had a ton of input in putting together in the first place. He's jammed together another very aggressive lineup for this tournament, and Tarei said it himself, he's got a lot of anti-aggro tech choices in his lineup.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that this series will not go 2.5 hours at this rate. So
I will
we'll
not take that bet, yeah.
Okay, we'll see how it goes. We are kicking off, of course, GreenSheep versus Tarei. Both playing the Shaman, but GreenSheep on the aggressive list. As we can see, the cards obviously going out with the Totem Golem, but Argent Squire in hand, Lava Burst, all of the stuff to go face, whereas Tarei is playing the mid-range Shaman list.
Yeah, and slightly different again from some of the lists that we've been seeing so far. We've seen the Jade package coming out. We've seen the version with no healing, sacrifice for additional late game cards. Tarei's list is Alakir and Bloodlust in there as his win conditions, but he is playing 2 copies of Jinyu Water Speaker. As I mentioned, very much tilting his decks towards those anti-aggro strategies, and that's why you see the man leaving up Pirate Warrior. This did not work out too well for B787, the last person to try this strategy, but this is a much more solid all-around strategy. It's not all in on coming up against Pirate Warrior, so Tarei probably has a better shot with his line of play. GreenSheep, on the other hand, happy to leave up Pirate Warrior, because not only can his decks compete on speed with Pirate Warrior, he's also got decks like his Tempo Mage, where double Mirror Image, double Water Elemental can be an absolute nightmare for Pirate Warrior to have to plow through in that matchup.
Yeah, and we see Tarei had a couple of options that turn, actually. He could have gone for the Totem Golem, which was his final decision, but he could have actually gone Jade Claws, and with the buff, with the Overload, actually just trade into the Totem Golem and have a token, you know, a 1/1 Jade on the board. But by playing it this way round, it means that he can still play Jade Claws next turn if he wants to make the trade. And this means that, you know, weapons kind of have charge, right? So he can get the Totem Golem down now and maybe force a response from GreenSheep, or just guarantee a trade next turn.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, classical thinking will tell you when your opponent coins the Totem Golem, they have a 1-mana follow-up to come down afterwards. Yeah, in a lot of decks, in a lot of the mid-range lists these days, that's polarized to just Lightning Bolt or Tunnel Trog most of the time. Those are the 1-mana options available. GreenSheep, as you can see from the Squire in hand, actually has a lot of options for what that 1-mana play could be. So Tarei could have gone with the Jade Claws, which would have been more effective against, say, a Lightning Bolt, but then Tunnel Trog or Argent Squire could have come out just the same. So still, the board state that he made was not enticing enough for GreenSheep to let the Lightning Bolt rip. He just takes the value trade with the Totem Golem. So Tarei just following his curve nicely here, and as you said, extra initiative now with the, quote, charging Jade Claws helps him to fight for this board more effectively.
Yeah, and something Tarei has to think about as well is, you know, playing the Jade Claws would lock out the Jinyu from next turn. And although you could say, yeah, you know, well, he doesn't really need tons of healing this early in the game, the Jinyu being a 3/6 is actually just a great minion to have on board to start trading away every turn.
Yep.
It's, yeah, you know, it's a Water Elemental stats that doesn't freeze, of course, but it's actually just incredibly difficult to get rid of.
Yes, indeed. And now Tarei deciding what he wants to do with this Totem Golem exactly. Whether he values sacrificing the damage here and potentially even opening up his Totem Golem to Flame Tongue by trading into the Divine Shield. Decides no such thing. He's just going to send the damage to face. And it's actually the slower mid-range deck that's got off to this slightly faster start here.
Yeah, and I even like the attack to face, to be honest. If I'm playing the mid-range deck and I've got the opportunity to go aggressive, then that suddenly just puts my normally aggressive opponent in the form of the aggro Shaman on the back foot and forces them, or potentially forces them, to be responsive there. And it's always a win there for the mid-range deck.
Yeah, absolutely. GreenSheep now, very awkward position to be in. This is where aggro Shaman can sometimes fall down. The quality of these removal cards when they are used as removal, like Lava Burst, they just don't really get the job done in the same way that some of the more efficient cards can do. You know, Lava Burst is just kind of a very bad card that does one specific job very, very well, and that's kill your opponent. Used as a removal tool, it's just not what you want to be doing at all, and that's going to be a significant tempo loss now for GreenSheep going into the following turn. But the good news for Sheep is that Tarei does not have a strong development turn here because of the fact you mentioned, the overload management preventing now his 4-drop.
Yeah, nothing too crazy going to happen. As quick cover over the Hex there. I think that's a bit overzealous, Tarei, if you go for that one. But I do like just the weapon use and getting the hero power down here. You could play the Flame Tongue Totem, but it just takes so long to get going that I don't think there's any need to it at this point, right? You know, you're not going to gain anything. You don't really play charging minions, or that many charging minions in the deck anyway.
Tarei now does decide to take care of the Squire. Could get more value out of that J-Claws later, but doesn't want that Squire pecking away from him, doesn't want to activate Flame Tongue Totem on the board. So now GreenSheep is going to have to find his way back into this game, and the Tunnel Trog has kind of missed its window already as being a really, really oppressive minion. It's one of the biggest snowballs in the game if you can get it down in the first 1 or 2 turns and then really leverage it for damage, even for value trades on the board in aggro mirrors. But now come turn 4, turn 5, it's lost so much of its efficacy already. And there you see GreenSheep, just mana efficiency, valuing the totem over the Tunnel Trog on the board.
Yeah, and there's a second Jinyu Water Speaker, so this is going to be an even more of an uphill climb for GreenSheep in this game, because as I mentioned before, you know, the heal is fantastic against an aggro deck, but just the minion, it's 6 health. It's not really removable in any reasonable fashion for GreenSheep. It would, you know, require, you know, a spell damage buffed Lava Burst, of which he's already used one. So, you know, that'd be incredibly difficult, and I wouldn't mind just seeing one drop now. Don't get the full gain of the health, but you just gain so much power on the board. It'd be very, very difficult for GreenSheep to fight back.
Yeah, so Tarei here basically gave GreenSheep an empty board on the previous turn, and he saw no development coming out. So that affects your hand reads enormously. You're looking up at those 5 cards in your opponent's hand and thinking, what could they be? And Hammer of Twilight and Azure Drake are definitely 2 factors that enter your mind. You know, expensive cards that he couldn't have played that turn. The others are situational cards like Lightning Bolt, Second Lava Burst, these tools that, you know, just weren't appropriate in that board position. So this turn, actually, Totem and Flame Tongue does look very attractive, but there's a risk with this play, if you make that kind of read, that you start to activate cards like Hammer of Twilight, like Lightning Bolt. You put a very good target for them on the board and make your opponent's hand, which is otherwise quite weak, potentially strong this turn.
Yeah, and with no true minions on the board, there are the totems, of course, but once the Flame Tongue is gone, they cannot attack. This means that the board is significantly weaker than if the Jinyu would be down. But, you know, to be fair, if that wasn't an answer that was available, then suddenly just having a Flame Tongue and 2 totems is looking pretty good for Tarei. So it does get the Flame Tongue removed. And of course, the Hammer of Twilight, once used up or destroyed, is going to summon an elemental onto the board, which will actually, you know, go a small way in helping deal with this Jinyu if that's how it ends up.
Yeah, certainly will, though the Lightning Bolt is in hand to be an efficient answer to it. And now GreenSheep is picking up some of the more efficient tools that he would have liked earlier, having to expend that Lava Burst for such a poor tempo turn earlier on. Jade Lightning is one of the big cards that he's been missing so far, but GreenSheep really has been in these situations with aggro decks that seem already unwinnable situations. He's so far behind on the board, but he has played so many games of aggro strategies in Hearthstone that if anyone can dig their way out of this, GreenSheep is one of the main men you want at the helm.
Yeah, it's very easy to play an aggro deck when you curve perfectly and just finish the game, you know, in the first, 4 or 5 turns. Right. The difficulty and the true skill comes out in these longer games where you have to ration all of your damage, know exactly the kind of reach your deck has in total, and know your exact win condition for the long game against every single matchup you may face. And we're going to see, you know, a sort of strange version of board development here with the Azure Drake and then the elemental coming off the weapon, so not too terrible here as Tarei on board cannot even deal with the 2 health on this elemental.
Very true. The Drake as well, but spell damage in play with the Lightning Bolt is going to take care of the big threat here, which is the Azure Drake. Mana-Tide Totem as well can help him pick up some additional options, maybe some AoE tools, having now drawn both of his Jinyu Water Speakers, which are of course the big stabilizing tools. He now just needs to make sure he doesn't lose a grip on the board, and the AoE cards in his deck are going to be the big things that he's digging for right now.
Gets a guaranteed Stoneclaw Totem, as there were already the other 3 onto the board, so there was a 100% chance of that totem coming out. He's going to try and use it to defend this Mana-Tide and help him cycle into more powerful cards. And, you know, indeed, there's not going to be the availability for the Alakir next turn. He's got plenty of options as well, so and once Alakir comes down, it's going to be quite difficult for GreenSheep to get through that even after the trades with the Divine Shield.
Yeah, having stabilized his health total first and foremost, and now stabilized the board with all these irritating totems in play, that Flame Tongue totem is going to represent a crushing amount of value going forward. Just look at the value trades he can pick up now. 4-2 goes down, the 2 1-1s get traded into, and the Healing Stream totem repairs the damage to the 2 totems on the left-hand side. This is one of the very best Flame Tongues you will see.
Yeah, and he's got a Tunnel Trog to fill out the curve as well if he wants to combine that with the Jinyu. Again, wouldn't use the healing up, but would continue to develop minions on the board. But seeing the way Tarei has been playing, I imagine he might just be okay with another hero power this turn.
Yeah, I mean, he's in such a great position. Basically, the Flame Tongue demands answering here, because if it's left on the board, he can just curve into Alakir next turn, and that is pretty much lights out on the game. So he might even just choose to say, hey, I'm in such a good position, I don't even need this extra 3-6 on the board. I have game-ending possibilities available to me already.
Okay, so he's choosing to use the Flame Tongue, trade across the minions, and then we'll see what he actually develops here. Tunnel Trog, not too much of a surprise. Oh, he's going to go for it.
He's going to heal up the minion. Yeah, actually, looking at the positioning, he did have to trade off the healing totem because of the fact that the 2 minions on the left didn't die, so they couldn't get the slide over factor. So, yeah, he's using the healing here just for value to protect the 1 health on his spell damage totem. At best, it protects him against a Maelstrom portal coming down here, but not a big deal. The big deal is, again, is that Flame Tongue totem sticking in play, curving into Alakir the Windlord the next turn.
Yeah, and speaking of Flame Tongue totems as well, there's 2 been sitting in GreenSheep's hand for quite a while now, and normally these are huge power cards for the aggro shaman deck, because the second you stick a minion, it's so much additional damage out of nowhere. It's absolutely fantastic, but because he's just always been behind on the board, or not even had a board to begin with, these Flame Tongues are just not really doing much. Maybe the best he can get out of them is Feral Spirit into Flame Tongue to make the damage of the spirits higher. It's really awkward to get some value.
Yeah, there's an evolution that almost every aggro deck has gone through, where it starts out and you just kind of hit face every single turn with it. You try and play charge minions and burst spells every single turn. Face Hunter started out that way, and then things like Haunted Creeper and Glaive Zuka came into the deck for board stabilization. Aggro Shaman started out that way, and then suddenly Chucky was one of the big innovators of playing Flame Tongue Totem and using it just for complete board dominance early on, or just to push early damage. Now we're seeing Pirate Warrior go through that same metamorphosis, going away from weapons and direct damage into more South Sea Captains, consolidating Frothing Berserkers. So the fact that GreenSheep has not been able to stick this board and activate those Flame Tongue Totems is one of the huge reasons why he's had so much trouble in this matchup, and it comes down pretty much first and foremost to the fact that Tarei drew an absolutely insane curve early on. GreenSheep playing the aggro deck is well within his rights to expect a more consistent, powerful curve in the early game, but Tarei, with the more inconsistent early game deck, was able to match him.
Yeah, sometimes you just draw it and it gets you that far ahead. Don't be too surprised with a Hex and a Jade Claws this turn. Just to completely continue to dominate the board, because Aggro Shaman doesn't really have a way to get it back without minions themselves, so this is going to be very, very difficult for GreenSheep, and almost spelling the end of the game, as we can obviously see the Alakir. It's still waiting in the hand, ready to be unleashed, and even potentially onto these Feral Spirits to just be 8 mana, clear those taunts, carry on dominating the game at this point.
Yep. Tarei just figuring out how much damage exactly he wants to push right now, whether he wants to eat up the Jade Claw charge, chooses not to, seeing that it won't represent direct lethal for him on the following turn anyway, just wanting to make sure he has maximum board control available to him. GreenSheep is trying to find some kind of value engine here. He's picked up both Hammer of Twilight now. That's about as good as it was going to get, but Alakir is game-ending, and I think GreenSheep may have just reached for the concede button.
It wouldn't surprise me at this point. There's pretty much no way to get even through this Alakir cleanly at all with no minions available, and it looks like Tarei is going to be stepping up into a 1-0 lead against GreenSheep here.
Yeah, long pause from GreenSheep. As soon as he saw the Alakir, he kind of perked up as if he was reaching for the escape on his keyboard, but it looks like he is just going to hang around, stick around for the long haul here, make Tarei show him the cards it takes to end the game, but this is pretty much representing the end on the board right now. Even if he wasn't threatened lethal, how is he going to find his way through that 3-5 Divine Shield taunt?
He doesn't have to. He just steady shots a few times.
15-turn clock, get him.
Yeah, sometimes you've got to go for it. Goes for the armor. We can see, of course, that one card in Tarei's hand at the moment is Lightning Storm. There is a spell damage totem on the board, so that is going to spell imminent doom for GreenSheep.
Was that Frodan roleplay there for a second?
It was. Yeah, exactly. I didn't go full Frodan.
Okay.
Got to build myself up to that one.
Fair enough. Flame Tongue Tome going to come down preemptively now, just to make sure that if Tarei did have to trade in, he would not be able to pick up as good value trades, but the Lightning Storm is straight up game ending. GreenSheep recognizes it, hits the bottom right, buddy, and it's Tarei going up 1-0.
Yeah, off to an absolutely fantastic start. Yesterday was a great day for the European representatives in this tournament, but today, not so much so far. Pavel being knocked down into the lower bracket of his group earlier today, and now GreenSheep starting this series off at 0-1.
Yeah, I did temper that warning at the end of yesterday. I made the point, if you rewind back to the World Championship at BlizzCon, after day one, North America was completely dominant.
Yeah.
And we were hearing all these big words from the North American players, and then when all things were said and done, Europe had by far the more dominant performance. You know, day one was great, and we were happy to extol the virtues of all the European players after one day, but one day means nothing in this tournament. This tournament is a marathon, not a sprint, and there is plenty of time, not just for North America, but for China and for APAC, who are all acquitting themselves very well to have the last laugh.
Yeah, and Tarei is, a very consistent player throughout HCT and, Hearthstone in general. But just in case you're not sure exactly who he is or know enough about him, check this out.
I believe my biggest strength as a player is the ability to be patient and always stay humble. I'm not really a superstitious person, but I am religious. I usually pray before every match, just for God to give me wisdom and stay focused, stay calm. Hearthstone's very psychological, so if your mindset isn't very good, then you might play worse. I think my psychological state and my actual gameplay ability are all better than the majority.
Tarei's proven consistently again and again throughout his entire career.
I've been pretty close to winning it all before, but I've always kind of fell short. I want to become one of the very best.
Tarei's quickly approaching Lord Jaraxxus, and there's Reno Jackson. Tarei is going to the Bahamas.
The Bahamas, it's a very big tournament. There's a lot on the line. Being able to qualify for BlizzCon, and there's also a lot of money and fame involved. Anything short of winning would be a slight disappointment.
He's a time-tested player, and he's been through the World Championships.
With the level of experience I have and all the time I've put into the game, I believe I'm ready to prove myself. I want to win first and prove to everyone that I am the great player that I think I am.
Tarei, as calm as the ocean here at Bahamas. I don't think I've ever heard him even remotely raise his voice. I cannot even imagine it. He's just like, yeah, I'm just pretty good at this game. I'm going to come here and win everything. He's just like quietly confident. It seems to be paying off for him so far as he's 1-0 up versus GreenSheep in this series.
And it's very poetic, honestly, of his place in the Hearthstone scene. He is just kind of this silent killer. We don't see him the rest of the year. He doesn't play in the DreamHack circuit. We don't see him popping up. He doesn't have a big, well-known stream. But when it comes cycles around to HCT season, time after time after time, Tarei is here making an impact.
Yeah, just so you know, though we called him the silent killer, we can confirm he has not, in fact, murdered anyone. Just
not to our knowledge.
No promises. Yeah, but moving on into this game, number 2, Tarei on the Reno lock. GreenSheep going for the good old Pirate Warrior. Are we the only people who've cast Pirate Warrior this event?
I think we might be, yeah.
They just save the Pirate Warriors for the Brits.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so kicking off with N'Zoth's first mate, as always, with Warrior. And looking at GreenSheep's hand, he's going to not have the best turn 2 in the world at the moment, but plentiful with options for turn 3 and 4. So potentially, as you were saying earlier, the sort of zoo style of Pirate Warrior that is evolved into here with these minions.
And GreenSheep actually has somewhat of a unique take on the Pirate Warrior here. Since Small Time Buccaneer has bitten the dust in terms of receiving the nerf, most players have settled on the same kind of list in response to that. They've replaced it with some bigger minions to be able to go late. But GreenSheep has actually moved Argent Horse Riders into his deck, which we're not seeing from any of the other players. You haven't seen it at all. They got banned. But we've been looking at the deck lists, and GreenSheep's deck is actually very unique.
Yeah, and I know it's a great explanation of the breakdown of the Pirate deck, Saul, but enough listening to you. We can listen to GreenSheep on his thoughts about Pirate Warrior.
Yeah.
My favorite and my least favorite card is Patches, the pirate, because when you don't draw it in your opening hand, it's really great. But if you draw it in your open hand, it's really annoying, and I'm really frustrated because of that.
Summing up Pirate Warrior with Patches. Can't really blame him on that one. Pretty much solved the whole discussion there as a Hellfire comes down from Tarei and clears up the Patches, so at least GreenSheep won't have to look at it anymore.
Yeah, GreenSheep's analysis was just miles beyond mine.
I
on
agree,
his deck.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's get GreenSheep up here after the match.
Bloodsail Cultist available, but the only pirate he has to play with it will replace that Fiery War Axe. Of course, he can swing away the War Axe and just generate a fresh 2/4 weapon, or he can just play the big boy 5/4, just get the extra 1 attack on his War Axe.
Yeah, and this has a kind of sort of half-hidden benefit of the Shadow Ball is a very, very clean way to kill the Corsair. But a Shadow Ball on turn 4 means that a card as powerful as the Twilight Drake will not be coming down, because Twilight Drake doesn't obviously look like a great card against Pirate Warrior, but if you can land it safely, that's going to trade against multiple minions from the Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, it's a little curious. If he'd have gone the other way, so he swings the Fiery War Axe for 3, he plays N'Zoth's First Mate, gets the 1/3 weapon, and then Bloodsail Cultists immediately to a 2/4. He can then follow that up, yes, off curve with the Naga Corsair, but he's then adding potentially 4 damage to a weapon, as opposed to just adding 1 damage to the weapon, doing it the way he did. So it's kind of mana efficiency versus damage efficiency, and you also have to temper that with the fact that he has another War Axe in his hand that he wants to get out at some point as well. So cannibalizing his weapon charges with the 4 potential charges from that Rusty Hook might just not be what he wants to do in this situation, because he wants to rush through to that second War Axe.
Yeah, and we're going to see potentially a little bit later on. Something that always interests me in this matchup is the use of Dirty Rat. I've seen it win games if it's played early and lose a lot of games in this matchup if it's played early. And, you know, the Pirate Warrior can actually just hit through it with like Heroic Strike or something, you know, get through that high amount of health.
Is there like a Goldilocks option where sometimes it's just kind of fine?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
There is no just right with Dirty Rat. It either whiffs or it wins you the game. At least in my experience anyway.
All right, Tarei now needs to scramble for defensive plays. Dirty Rat can wall out 6 damage here. The trade is available for the Drake on the board. So if the Rat doesn't pull a minion, he is nice and safe on board. But depending on what the Rat does pull out can be a big deal. But Rat can go along with the Farseer as well for a lot of stability this turn.
Yeah, I think you pretty much have to commit to that at this point. You need something to just survive. And look at the kind of power on the board is ridiculous here. And it's the addition of the Naga Corsair that a lot of the time, or for the longest time, it's like, oh, 5/4, the stats don't, oh, the minion's just not that good. It's a 5/4. You're so used to wanting more health than attack most of the time to get value from a minion. But if you just want to punch someone in the face, you always take that extra damage, and that combined with the +1 to a weapon as well can become quite powerful indeed, and just get so much extra damage through for the Pirate Warrior. With the lack of Buccaneer being used nowadays, it's a kind of a weird card to replace it with, but it works out in the end.
Yeah, and there's something that makes Naga Corsair kind of a special case, because Pirate Warrior is so aggressive that premium removal, polymorphs and fireballs and hexes and Shadow Word Deaths and whatever else are used on, you know, 2 drops, 3 drops sometimes. So suddenly, the easy clears that would come down in most decks against a 5/4 that you would play have already been siphoned out of your opponent's hand, and your 5/4 is free to terrorize the board.
Yeah, GreenSheep drawing into the Frothing Berserker, though, he can play it. And if I have looked correctly, he can actually clear everything up whilst buffing the Frothing substantially at this point. So he's got a couple of options. He has already seen Hellfire as well. So even though a lot of the minions, well, the 2 pirates on the board, the Cultist and the Raider, will be very low health or 1 health, then it does mean that they could die to a Demon Wrath, for example.
Yeah.
But with a Hellfire already gone.
He can actually trade the board down directly as you see it. 5/3 into 2/6 and War Axe, and then end up losing nothing. The way he's doing it now, he will end up losing his 5/3 if he wants to trade out the 3/3. Which I generally would think I'd recommend, because it maximizes protecting your Frothing, which is a huge win condition here. So interesting, since he's doing the trade this way, what his plans are for that Earthen Ring Farseer, whether he is just going to disrespect it and go face. And if I know GreenSheep, there is nothing he likes more than disrespecting you and jamming you in the face.
Yeah, okay, so he's just leaving multiple targets on the board. To be fair, you go with the old technique of, well, why trade if your opponent will do it for you at this point? And although the Frothing has potential to grow very, very large indeed, the 5-3 in terms of the Raider is nothing to be sniffed at either. So it's pretty much asking Tarei to deal with both of these minions, and there's still the Cultist on the end with 3 attack. And we've not seen any of the charge minions, for example. No Korkrons yet from GreenSheep. There's still weapons in the deck as well. There's a lot he could draw off the top for the extra push.
Right, what it means leaving this 3-3 alive, by the way, we're going to Leroy a Frothing this turn. That's what's going to happen. What it means leaving the Frothing alive is that the small AoEs, the Demon Wrath for 2 and the Hellfire for 3, now kill your Frothing because that minion is still there, whereas otherwise that Frothing is always consolidated against AoE effects. GreenSheep says, I don't care, I'm pushing enough damage that that AoE is not relevant, especially Hellfire, which would have done damage to Tarei anyway. Don't say things like
it's a
that.
Mountain Giant. That is indeed not a Reno. I don't believe there is anything that can be tapped into that would save the day here. I suppose Demon Wrath can be tapped into. Oh, no, you can't actually, because you'll die. Oh, yeah, I don't think there's anything.
Good talk.
I like to do quick maths on stream, guys, and you had a little bit of a showing of that one. Yep, I don't believe there's anything unless I'm missing something tall. But
tap Kazakus, 1-mana potion, deal 3, gain armor.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good work. You win, but GreenSheep wins this match, this game, sorry, and evens it up 1-1 with the Pirate Warrior. And I think at this point in the last series, they hadn't finished the mulligans from game 1 yet. So we are doing pretty well, at least in terms of speed. So Tarei, a little bit disappointed he looks there, just like, well, Pirate Warrior got me, but we mentioned this yesterday. No matter what your strategy, if you leave Pirate Warrior up, you have to be prepared to just get smoked down, basically.
Yeah, Pirate Warrior gonna get you is basically the moral of this story. Amnesiac made a great tweet where he did the maths on exactly how favored you need to be to sweep one deck in a best-of-7 series. And it's 84%, I think, all your decks on average need to be favored to make that happen. So, yeah, if you leave a deck up as powerful as Pirate Warrior, it's probably going to get a win against you.
Yeah, so before we move into game 3, we got to check out some information on Tarei before. But now let's meet GreenSheep.
Well met.
My name is GreenSheep. I'm 19 years old. I'm from the United Kingdom. I made a rap for the Hearthstone Global Games for people to vote for me. Hey, calling all the people from the UK, don't close the video, hear what I have to say. I'm GreenSheep, 2017 Bahamas qualifier. Even made it to 2014 Worlds prior. There are a lot of good players at this tournament, but I really want to play Pavel because he beat me in the Winter Playoffs 3-0, so I want to get my revenge here.
Well, it's great to know that if Hearthstone doesn't work out, GreenSheep has a glorious rapping career ahead of him if he so chooses.
No, he doesn't.
That was an experience, I'm not going to lie. But we've known GreenSheep for a very long time now, pretty much since the beginning, many, many years ago.
Yeah, when I started playing, sorry to cut you off,
okay.
just coming up in the UK, GreenSheep was the big name. He was the head honcho. It was him and Blackout, essentially, that were the players who were dominating the UK scene. And, you know, I've already finished my competitive career and moved on to casting at this point. GreenSheep's still going strong. So
GreenSheep's a young guy. He can still do. He's not like us getting on now.
That's true.
But yeah, so GreenSheep has been, as you said, dominant early on. But last year was not his year. He just didn't have the results or the success he was looking for. He was always just out of reach of the big finishes in, you know, some of the bigger lands. He would just not make the cut in Swiss, for example, like just about miss out. So he's definitely looking to have a great start to 2017 here in HCT.
Yeah, not his year is kind of a good way to put it because he didn't do anything wrong. It was just tiny fractions. He tied with Stanadachi for the 8th place, the final last call spot for Europe, and then lost a playoff. So he was that playoff away. The story could have been completely different. This could have been GreenSheep going all the way through last call and going to BlizzCon and perhaps emulating what Pavel ended up doing. So absolutely tiny fractions in Hearthstone can make all the difference.
Yeah, and and we are moving on to game 2, of course. As the first few turns have got started, it is GreenSheep's Druid and Tarei locking in that Warlock again. And you know, what do you make of this matchup, Sol? Because I know a lot of this is debated to a certain extent. I've definitely had some weird conversations where people disagree with me, but I'll let you make your mind up first.
Yeah, there is a significant amount of debate about this matchup. If you just go by classical thinking, you just let the Druid curve out as hard as possible, then yeah, the Jades are going to get you eventually. But there are key triggers, key combos, key turns that the Reno Lock can look to activate. First off is a potential Doomsayer tempo setup. So Doomsayer following a big Shadow Flame, Doomsayer following a big Twisting Nether, and then you push a big tempo turn following that. Because the one thing that Druid can't compete with is a big tempo swing against them. They don't deal with that kind of thing very well. Secondly, if you're playing combo, you can always just kill them. But it looks like we are having some significant technical issues here. Tarei still with his hand in the air, so it looks like, thankfully, this game was only early on, so if we do have to go to a regame here, not too much damage done, but it looks like there has been some kind of disconnect issue.
Yeah, we'll have to just check out what's going on. I think we are going to go for a game restart, as the game was frozen for Tarei, so he has to continue. We're in the early turns, and oh wow, okay, that was an uprooted Ancient of War, so we did get at least to see one so far in this tournament, but we are going to have to go for a game reset due to the technical issue.
I think we might okay. Looking like Tarei's happy.
We're finding out. We're with you guys here. We're going to see what the result is. It looks like Tarei is continuing to play.
I think Tarei disconnected for the entirety of GreenSheep's turn, but since he didn't lose any actions himself, he's happy to continue.
We got away with it. So thankfully, we can continue this without. Even though the game was early, as we can see, there's an uprooted Ancient of War, so I want to cast this game.
Yeah, exactly. Let's ignore all the disconnect issues and just focus on the simple fact that there is an uprooted Ancient of War on the board right now.
Okay, we are just going to 100% get this signed off that it is actually the game being continued as these players choose to play. We're just 100% working out exactly what went wrong with Tarei, but for now, we are going to continue playing, and oh yes, okay, I've just been told that the game is legit. This is the actual game, guys. We are not tricking you in any way, and this Ancient of War is going to happen.
Yeah, and just look at how good it has been here. It connected and it ate the Leroy from Tarei, and I was speaking about the Reno Lock's win conditions early on. One is the big tempo swing, the second is just killing them with the burst damage combo, and with the Leroy gone, that is pretty much out the window, so GreenSheep is just marching on here. That uprooted Ancient of War, as well as endearing GreenSheep to Twitch chat forever, was inspired.
Yep, I'm sure there'll be a certain phrase being spammed at that point when the Ancient of War was played that I will not
something
repeat.
About spherical objects?
Yes,
okay.
Indeed it may be, I guess. But Reno Jackson is going to save Tarei for now at least, put him all the way back up to 30. But GreenSheep so far ahead, already started stacking his Jades up. He's got plenty of damage in hand. And it also makes me laugh that even with Jade Druid, GreenSheep finds a way to be hyper-aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think this deck is in his lineup because he couldn't find another legitimate aggro deck that he felt was up to the power level of the rest of his lineup, and therefore he's like, all right, I'll just play Jade Druid and go face with that. That seems fine to me.
Seems reasonable indeed. Looks like GreenSheep, is he going to trade this off? It does look like he's going to use Feral Rage. If you didn't, then you open up a reasonably strong board to a Shadow Flame, which would be very unfortunate for GreenSheep and wouldn't be... Sometimes you could be like, oh, well, if he Shadow Flames it, it's fine, but this is actually a really good board, so it wouldn't be worth it at all. And he still has the Azure Drake to keep the card draw coming next turn as well.
Yeah, it is nearly Twisting Nether turn for Tarei here, and Twisting Nether, I talked about it a little bit at the start of the game. Twisting Nether is very much one of the key cards. For the Druid player, you need to force the Reno Lock, if they have it, to play it on turn 8. Because if they play it on turn 8, that's just a reset. You get to develop again, you still have initiative. If you hold back, and that's sometimes something that I think Druid players make a mistake of doing, they hold back and they allow the Reno Lock player to not Twisting Nether, in their mind playing around that card. That allows them to wait 2 turns longer and then Twisting Nether on turn 10, drop the Doomsayer alongside it, and that's when the complete swing in the game happens. So Tarei, I think, with that Hellfire this turn, is trying to protect his Twisting Nether for the long term. He doesn't want to use his ultimate answer this early on in the game.
Yeah, and also the later in the game it gets, even if a Jade Idol is cycled, after a big twisting, after you've committed to some huge Jades, it's actually very difficult to just refill that board. If you play one Jade and maybe a minion, then Warlock can probably Siphon Soul and contest the board as well. So once you do that twisting nether, it's kind of your last hurrah as the Warlock to try and get the win, depending on the circumstance, of course.
But now this decision is actually very, very tough with GreenSheep. I mean, I stand by everything I just said, but the fact is now if he commits to the board more heavily and tries to force the twisting nether, he doesn't have the refill that I was talking about. He's played his last minion in the form of that Jade Idol, so he is now going to hold back. And this plays, I have to say, a little bit towards Tarei, because he now gets that extra turn or two just to relax and try and set up a win condition for himself.
Yeah, he has Mountain Giant into Shadow Bolt into Mistress if he really wants. Does leave the 3-3 up, but that is one hell of a turn, and one that a Druid a lot of the time is just not equipped to deal with.
Yeah, Mountain Giant Shadow Bolt can load the Mistress up there as well. It's looking like a pretty dominant board state from Tarei at this point. Just considering his options, Nightblade Templar has come off the Mulch, I believe. Doesn't have dragons in hand right now. Is there any dragon in his deck that can activate that?
It's your Drake, I imagine. Is your Drake in it?
In Reno Lock? Let's check.
I might be making things up. I thought I saw one.
Oh, just the Twilight Drake, right? Has that already been played?
Oh, I might have meant Twilight Drake.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's going to go for the Mountain Giant, the Shadow Bolt, and the Mistress of Mixtures.
Yep, seemed like the fairly obvious play that leapt out for me. He's just considering now whether he wants to value trade that Imgang boss, try and pick up some value on the 1/1s, but that would lead him playing into Swipe just that little bit too hard, so chooses not to in the end. And now it's Tarei playing the unfairly large minion for 2 little mana. He's dropping the 8/8 on the board for the princely sum of 4, and he is now in that dominant spot. GreenSheep, the big push early with the 10-5, but just a little bit too all-in the end. He didn't get that backup resource hit that he needed from, say, a Nourish to allow him to keep going past that early push, which I 100% stand by. I think that was a brilliant play from him. He can be expected to draw a little better than he has done since then, but just has not hit the gas to back it up just yet.
Yeah, and GreenSheep prioritizing the kill on the Mountain Giant, of course, is the huge threat from Tarei. Everything else you can just deal with, and plus the Mistress of Mixtures is going to gain him some health anyway. The draw into the Jade Blossom is pretty nice, actually. The Jade being a 4/4, kind of awkward to deal with, or at least soaks up the minions that are on the board, and just, well, the ramp wasn't really needed, but still, adding to that Jade count is pretty huge.
Yep, Tarei has a decent amount of time to stabilize now, though. Mistress in board is buying some health. He's still ahead just on the board state. Has Emperor to keep pushing here to play quality minions. Has Kazakus now to back this all up as a big answer if he needs it, or just a further tempo push if he's offered, say, a plus health potion and a summon effect. So he is in a really, really good-looking spot here. And GreenSheep, the UK representative, the European representative, is perhaps going down the line where day 2 is just not looking as rosy as day 1 did for the European contingent.
Yes, all about day 3.
we switch focus now. We get to create the narratives here, guys.
We can do alternate days, it's fine. We're okay with that. We can share. So it looks like Emperor is going to be the turn. I don't mind this at all. Just gets the reductions on some key cards. Siphon Soul being a 5 just makes it so much easier to squeeze in a turn and answer maybe the second Ancient of War that can come out, as well as continue to develop some minions behind that. Jade Blossom. Cycling, get Jade. When does GreenSheep have to play Jade Idol here? Do you think he's just intentionally waiting for the Gadget Zan, or potentially Fandral, but mainly Gadget Zan to help cycle?
Yeah, it's definitely Gadget Zan is a consideration. There is only one in GreenSheep's deck, fairly common, but worth pointing out anyway. Occasionally, sometimes you see lists that play double Auctioneer, but I think he's recognizing he's so far out of resources right now that it's Nourish that he needs to hit, and if he holds on to these 1-mana spells, Gadget Zan Auctioneer essentially becomes a 3rd Nourish for him. Yeah. So, adds another chance for him to get that tool that he needs.
Yeah, Tarei being in such control, I was going to say, he can actually just quite easily go for the 10-mana potion. You don't need the flexibility of the 5-mana one as much if you're so far ahead already as well. So got a few options here, deal 6 to all. Feels pretty reasonable unless he's feeling confident about just being able to push in GreenSheep now and just push some damage and just have 8 go, 8 face, finish up the game. We'll see what he picked though. Well, summon 3, deal 8.
Solid.
Nice. Yeah,
big,
I like
big
it.
tempo potion. So he's just looking to consolidate this position that he's got, and I love that. Like I
a
said,
temp potion.
a temp potion. Beautiful.
Woo.
All right, nailed it. I like this line a lot. You know, I talked about this at the start. It's not the conventional method. It didn't go right down any of the lines that I suggested at the start, but he's found a way to grip tempo, and now he is not letting go because Druid does not do well with consolidating or recovering a board state like this. They just have to keep playing minions into it and hope eventually they can jam enough stats down on the board to get a grip. And GreenSheep now, for the 3rd turn in a row, agonizing over this decision as to whether to play the Jade Idol.
Yeah, he looks really down at this point, and you know, you can understand it being so close of getting just like a sneaky victory with that innovated out Ancient of War. Got so close, but Tarei was ready with the Reno to be able to heal all the way back up much earlier in the game, and again, GreenSheep just got the toughest of decisions to make. And I don't really know what to do, I'm gonna be honest.
I think the moment might have passed. I think now your opponent, having got all these Emperor discounts, picked up a big Kazakus potion as well, they're probably able to answer this board state even if you do make the additional Jade. I think if there was a turn for the additional Jade, it was last turn. Yeah. But now you've gone down that line, I think the GreenSheep is right to continue with it now. I don't think that 1 extra Jade is going to make a big deal in this spot.
I mean, Tarei's okay with a new Mountain Giant on the board as well, and this might just spell the end. Even the Mistress of Mixtures, you know, Tarei's not bothered really about GreenSheep's health. He just wants to make sure he cannot lose at this point, and he'll get there eventually. And this is just going to be a huge amount of overdone damage. Even Nightbane Templar hitting the board, because why not? It's some extra damage. What's the card going to be? Wild Growth will get GreenSheep a draw into Gadget Zan, but I don't think it matters what he draws at this point. I think GreenSheep's just curious if he can even hit Gadget Zan.
No such joy. Ancient of War is a wall, but not nearly big enough. Even if it was, Blast Crystal Potion in hand is going to end this game in no time at all. Living Roots now can answer this board state, but it's Tarei who's going to a 2-1 lead here. Tarei looking in prime position to start this recovery for North America that they are sorely in need of. And this game going a long way against the practice set that the players said they were playing against each other, which GreenSheep said he won in. I find that very strange. I've never heard of that. 2 players playing against each other in a practice set before their tournament series.
Right before the match is due the next day. So yeah, you know, Tarei did take the win there, and just want to let you know there was a slight issue earlier in that game, but it did not affect it. The disconnect was during GreenSheep's turn, and by the time it was Tarei's turn, he was back in the game ready to go. So didn't affect the outcome of the game at all. So yeah, you know, as a HCT, we have some cool discussions, and we like giving you some pretty cool tips as well. So here's a free one for you guys to squelch or not to squelch.
With the casters.
To squelch or not to squelch?
Oh, to squelch. You need to squelch your opponent.
Squelch. Every time.
Greetings, friend. Astounding.
The pleasure is mine.
Nature will rise against
The light shall burn you.
My thanks.
I never squelch. I'm a real chatterbox.
I will crush you.
I squelch every opponent, every game. Even if I'm playing against a friend, I squelch them, just so they can't tilt me.
You don't even let them say hello.
Justice demands retribution. Well played.
Usually when I make a mistake and I don't want them to emote at me, I'll squelch them so I can just live with the embarrassment on my own.
My magic will tear you apart.
I don't find emotes to be bad-mannered. I find them to generally be playful. In some cases, yeah, my opponent will be like, greetings, right when they kill me. But for all those moments that, you know, something ridiculous happens and I get to say, wow, it's worth it.
Wow.
If I, you know, attack with my weapon before I attack with Small Time Buccaneer, I'm immediately squelching them. I don't want them to well-played me. I don't want to hear it. I know that I messed up.
If someone greets me, I tend to greet them back. But when I greet them, I also tend to also squelch them back. Hello, please don't talk to me.
Even if I'm like playing against my wife, and my wife will like draw a good card and she emotes me, I'll get tilted from my wife.
A natural mistake.
I will be your your death.
If it's late in the game and then someone emotes me, oh no, this guy's got to go down. And I will go to the ends of the earth to make sure I beat this guy and then slip that emote right back into him when he knows he's about to die. That, to me, is the Squelch metagame.
That explains a lot. Admirable often says hello to me and then walks away. So, yep, guess he doesn't really want to talk to me that much. Squelch is me in real life.
Yeah, the two of us were strangely absent from that video. Are you a Squelcher?
I'm not unless someone really spams. I kind of like the idea of someone squelching me, then I just wreck them, and then you just do the one emote back. So that's pretty good for me, but if they keep doing it, okay, I do turn them off. I do get stressed, but we are going to get into the game. One final note. What do you do, Sol?
Oh, easy Squelch, every single time.
I thought you would. Try hard. Yeah. Okay, so Tarei versus GreenSheep. 2-1 to Tarei so far. It's going to be Tarei's turn to use the Pirate Warrior. Both players leaving this deck up, and so far it's been to the detriment of the players to leave this one alive, and we're going to find out if Tarei can do the same here.
Yeah, it is the aggro shaman coming out from GreenSheep, though, and this, back in the days of Small-Time Buccaneer at least, was one of the favorable matchups that could take down Pirate Warrior very, very consistently. Now that things have changed a little bit, Pirate Warrior hasn't lost as much as Aggro Shaman from the loss of that package because they still have that one-drop Pirate, the N'Zoth's first mate, that they can jam for great value on turn 1 and summon their patches. Shaman only has access to South Sea Deckhand, just not quite as exciting on turn 1. So Pirate Warrior has become, you know, the optimal order aggro deck if you want to look at it that way.
Also, a noticeable lack of Spirit Claws. As well.
That is an issue too, yeah.
Yeah, that might be a small influence onto the deck as well. So Tarei getting off to a reasonably quick start. The Raider going up as a 5-3 this early is pretty nice. Now got the Arcanite Reaper for much later on in the game, but sort of just reliable damage. GreenSheep has a few options himself. One of them is called 4-mana 7/7, I think. That generally helps out.
Is that the official? Hang on, let's check. So. Is that what it says on the card? I can't quite see.
4-mana 7.
Okay.
Yep, I think so. Jade Lightning going to be the choice this turn, though. Frothing, as always, not a minion you can leave alive and then hope to live another day.
There's that N'Zoth's first mate pickup, though, and that is perfect alongside the existing South Sea Captain. Otherwise, the turn would have been a little bit awkward. Might have involved sending a lot of damage into a 1-1 to play around the threat of a Flame Tongue Totem, but now getting the Rusty Hook alongside that board buff, look at what a great position Tarei is in already.
Yeah, GreenSheep is just on the defensive here, using all of these spells, normally used as burn damage in this deck, to just kill off this onslaught of pirates from Tarei.
Ooh.
And it's just going to keep coming.
Does Tarei have a magic hat? Because he seems to be able to communicate with his deck right now.
Tarei is just magic. Full stop. He's often been called or been compared to Harry Potter. The glasses are similar. And we were talking about it the other day in the interview. Do you
remember?
True,
yes. Yeah.
It's not the first time this has been said.
Yeah, I was not expecting that offhand comment to go down into the Harry Potter
I said
references.
he was magic.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Blood Cell Cultist being the pickup, though, was an exciting draw. It's not necessarily the strongest play this turn. He does have the option just to double trade and jam the Corcoran to face instead, but in the end, just continues to play for board dominance for as long as he can. And now with this board consolidated, he has a minimum of 10 damage from the Reaper plus 8 more from the other 2 cards in his hand. That adds up nicely to 18 where I come from, Raven.
Yeah, and we pretty much come from the same place, so I'd have to agree with you on that. Oh, don't start.
Not even close.
For anyone that doesn't know, North versus South over here. Lava Burst being used again to clear off minions, and although this looks very desperate on GreenSheep's side, and it kind of is, you know, it still has a lot of minion pressure that can come out later on, so it's not like using these spells just means GreenSheep has no way to end the game. This is often just removing more of the Pirate Warrior's win conditions than playing for the late game.
Yeah, so Tarei he does have the reach. He has GreenSheep covered right now. The problem is that Shaman has numerous defensive tools, even in aggro Shaman form, to be able to stop this damage going through. There's always access to Stoneclaw Totem, the Taunt Totem. There's always access to Feral Spirits if that card gets drawn. So this game is not locked up just yet, even though Tarei has got the board, he's got the damage in hand, he's got everything he can possibly need. one of the reasons why Aggro Shaman has classically been so favored in this matchup, apart from the Spirit Claws that we were talking about, is the ability to wall out huge amounts of damage with small irritating taunts in the late game.
I've laughed many a time when I've rolled Stoneclaw Totem against an Arcanite Reaper that had been already upgraded. And all that damage goes into a 0-2. But GreenSheep finally sticking a minion to the board in the form of the true name, the Flame Wreath Faceless, of course. I would imagine at this point, Tarei just ignores the Flame Wreath, sitting on 28 health. You can take a few punches from that guy, and with Arcanite Reaper in hand, already has the Cultist as well, but just Arcanite Reaper and a Heroic Strike is just a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's the immediately obvious turn in terms of just maximizing jamming damage here and setting yourself up for direct lethal. But you can actually front load the N'Zoth's first mate, then equip the Reaper, and then just swing with the Reaper. That way, if your opponent has defensive tools, you go into the long game a little bit better, because with the Pirates on board, you can then drop Cultist and then upgrade the Reaper for the following turn, because you beat no defensive options regardless, right?
You can actually do this as well, where if your Cultist goes on to 3 attack, hits him for 4, which puts him to 9, which the Arcanite Reaper and Heroic Strike just ends the game.
I like this too,
As long as there's no Taunt Totem. So I actually really like this, because it also means you're not kind of just wasting a weapon, and also the minions have to be cleared. So he has lethal without the minions anyway.
Yeah, this is actually a significantly better line than what I suggested.
Just better than both of us.
Because it front loads the most power on board. It creates the most problems for the opponent. They have to put up a taunt. They have to deal with a big board. That is a Feral Spirit off the top. Exactly what GreenSheep was looking for in this spot.
Yeah, that's actually pretty huge. Going to roll the Totem instead of the Flame Tongue 1, because you don't get the sort of instant damage from the Flame Tongue because of the trade. It was always going to happen on the Cultist there, and also you can always roll a Stoneclaw Totem to create an additional taunt, which is absolutely massive, as we've mentioned in this matchup.
Yep. And the 3 damage weapon being equipped now is an additional benefit from the Bloodsail Cultist on the previous turn. It sets him up perfectly now to at least deal with one of these Spirit Wolves. But the way to deal with the other is a bit more complex. He wants that Reaper charge to connect to face, so he'll want to pick up charge minions, Leroy or the second Korkron elite to follow this up, get through that Spirit Wolf token, and then connect with the face.
Don't tell me Spirit Wolf's becoming a totem in the expansion. That'll be very, very scary indeed. Tarei does have a lot of... Tarei does have a lot of good draws still left in the deck, and he is on 30 health with the addition of a few hero powers to help out there. But as you just mentioned, the Stoneclaw Totem is absolutely huge. Now, instead of just the Feral Spirit being a problem, there can literally be that guy, or that totem even, I don't know if it's a guy or not, every single turn.
Not even going to make the joke. You can have it.
Not worth. Every single turn, that can pop up and cause a huge problem. And GreenSheep's only rocking 5 health at the moment, but he can really snap this board back, and with this kind of power, there we go. He's just saying, right, let's go. I am not trading with 9 damage when I can trade with a lot less, and this might put a clock on Tarei here.
GreenSheep is massively, massively favored in this spot. It's crazy how quickly Aggro Shaman can
Feral
do
Spirits,
this
man.
in the mirror.
Good card.
Yeah, it's absurd. It was drawn at the most timely of times, but of course, he could have drawn that at any given point in the matchup, and it's very, very effective. So he's almost entitled to get one at some point. It's a card that Pirate Warrior always tries to plan to beat one of in a lot of spots. But yeah, it's crazy. Such a dominant position. Tarei had to switch to the pure damage plan because that's all he had available to him. And GreenSheep was just able to lock up the game with the wall of taunts.
Yeah, and the benefit here to a certain extent for Tarei is that the Taunt Totem can't be rolled again unless he uses it to just trade in, but then he might get the Healing Totem because he'd have to trade away that first. So yeah, the Taunt Totem's going to stick, but it's just not going to be enough at this point. It's pretty much just going to have to be Korkron off the top.
Or Leroy.
Yes, I believe that would also work.
Or South Sea Deckhand.
Keep him coming. Is Tarei playing Mortal Strike?
Tarei is playing 2 copies of Mortal Strike, yes. So GreenSheep has to consider playing around that as well, yeah. No, Mortal Strike, if it's drawn, will be able to clear the Taunt Totem out of the way anyway and represent lethal with the Arcanite Reaper, so there's no reason to play around in that spot.
Lethal.
But GreenSheep just picks up the lethal regardless, right down to the very wire. But GreenSheep engineered himself a favorable position through that Stoneclaw Totem and the Feral Spirits. The irritating taunts that we talked about squares this series up, and the stress painted on the face of GreenSheep right now.
Yeah, just hands across the face. I'll be thinking kind of got away with that one. But to be fair, as you mentioned about Feral Spirits, a lot of the time in that matchup, or at least from the Pirate Warrior side, I feel like, oh, my opponent played Feral Spirit. At any time,
GG.
I probably lose. Yeah, that is just how it is. So GreenSheep fights back, and now it is all square between him and Tarei. There's Warrior Druid left for Tarei, and Druid and Rogue left for GreenSheep.
Yeah, and it is the aggressive Rogue from GreenSheep, not the Miracle Rogue that you might be expecting to see, the much more aggressive version that we've seen in 3 or 4 different forms already today. GreenSheep, of course, the aggro player, bringing the most aggressive Rogue he can.
Yeah, and just in case you guys forgot, this tournament is being held, of course, in the Bahamas. And this, I think it's actually getting dark outside at this point, but it's absolutely fantastic. The resort is amazing. The beach is just a stone's throw away. And Salt's even been in the hot tub.
It's very true.
Which is all you really need to know.
Today's been a nice change of pace, actually. There's been like a nice cool breeze blowing across the island to counterpart the warm weather that we've had. So yeah, awesome time being had for all. Incredible location, and you can see the tavern window behind us looks out directly onto the beach.
That's why the players are playing fast deck. So like, I just want to get back out onto that beach after I win a match. So can't blame them at all. Although I'm sure GreenSheep isn't distracted by the fact he can see the beach through the window in the tavern. As we move on to the next game, the winner of this will go ahead in this series. Once again, and Tarei with the Pirate Warrior versus GreenSheep's Rogue. And tell me about this Rogue list, Soto.
It's a mishmash of cards. It's it
has 30 cards. That's a good start.
Yeah,
okay.
it's the Finger Stealth Aggro Rogue that we've seen in various forms, but there is a lot of one-offs hanging around in this list. There's 1 Shadow Step, 1 Deadly Poison, 1 Argent Horse Rider, 1 Defender of Argus, 1 Naga Corsair. That leads to a certain amount of inconsistency within the deck, but it means that if you do pull those powerful options at the right time, your deck can look like it has superpowers at times because it feels like you can do everything because you have such a wide range of cards available.
Yeah, almost a sort of a splash of the Reno effect,
exactly,
right? Exactly. Yeah. So, speaking of options, Tarei has a pretty good set of options for his opening hand as well. You can go Bloodsail Raider. Now that he knows the 1-drop, one of the pirates won't live, it means he doesn't have to or can coin out the cultist and get the buff on the weapon. So, interesting choice here. Raider would just be just fine as a 3/3, but I wonder if he wants to use the. Using the coin on the Corsair wouldn't really change anything, right?
Not a great deal.
What value does the... Oh.
He's just going to coin the 3/4 here. He's just playing for stats on the board. This was the point I was going to make up. I don't really see the point in coining the 3/3 here, but coining the 3/4, just Spider Tank you has some merit here. This 3/3 is a little strange to me. I don't really understand the thinking behind this one.
There was a pause after the coin and then a shake of the head from Tarei, so... I mean, you don't normally coin and then wait this long to play a minion. There are only 2 options. Well, there are 3, but one would just blow the coin. So
yeah,
I think Tarei might have got a little bit giddy there. And I don't really know what his plan is. I mean, now you kind of just play the cultist, right? There is no realistic option. If you're using the coin, it's pretty much a waste to play the Corsair. As 1, that's probably just going to get cheaper later in the game. And 2, you don't really need a taunt minion at this point. You're on 29 health.
Yeah, if you're coining a minion in that spot, this is the one you're coining for me. Because it's more resilient on the board, it plays around backstab to an extent, although as you see the Deadly Poison being paired with it is going to take care of it. But that intense moment of indecision from Tarei betrays that probably something did not work in reality the way that it was working in his mind while he was thinking that turn through.
Yeah, and we can get some insight into his mind about what he thinks about his Pirate Warrior deck.
My biggest weakness as a player is sometimes I play too quickly because of nerves or pressure, and I try to finish games quickly.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah.
Basically, that looked pretty quick to me, and then there was a long pause considering what was going on with that coin, so maybe a few pressure moments. We were talking backstage with these players a little bit earlier on, and they were kind of, you know, as you said, they played a practice set, they're being friendly towards each other, of course, but they were saying, like, Tarei was the first to mention, she's like, yeah, you know, so we watched the matches earlier today, the matches yesterday, and it looks like it is hard to play on that stage, and to be honest, I ain't arguing with that.
No, definitely not. The pressure, the big lights. These are two of the most experienced players in the game in terms of playing on big stages, and it's clearly even getting to at least one of them in this spot, so hard to discount that factor. Backstab SI picked up his
absolutely huge.
I was just about to make the point about the one-offs again in GreenSheep's deck. The one-off Deadly Poison served him very, very well in the early game. This one-off Defender of Argus, not so much so far, but the SI7 agent pickup has kind of saved a very bad-looking hand there.
Yeah, that was actually fantastic for GreenSheep. Allows him to keep a minion on the board. The upgrade is going to help Tarei, though, clear this off, and quite timely for him also. Double Raider. That is very, very difficult after seeing Backstab, the Deadly Poison, the SI now. Both of those are going to be very difficult indeed for GreenSheep to clear up, and it might have to take a slow turn this turn, maybe developing the Shaco, and then try and deal with them the turn after with the combination of Shaco and maybe another minion and Defender of Argus.
Yeah, it's not looking pretty for GreenSheep in this spot, though. There is a big board staring him down, and there are a ton of damage to follow it up. So Shaku Miracles are probably going to have to take place here. The Leroy back up as well. And this is just going to end the game with Mortal Strike and Heroic Strike. Not a good game for GreenSheep.
Yeah, and this is a very straightforward linear game plan from Tarei. Rogue does not really play taunts outside of the Argus, but if you reduce the minions on the board down to almost nothing, Argus becomes less of an issue. Right. Everything lined up for Tarei there, despite the weird turn with the coin, so he moves ahead 3-2 in this series, 1 game away from winning this match and going into the upper bracket of his group.
Yeah, and you know, apart from that one little moment, he's had a good handle on this series so far. It has seemed to be, even in some of the games that he's won, it's been GreenSheep kind of scrapping for ball position more often than not, and it's now Tarei with just the Jade Druid left to win with, and his Jade Druid, actually, we might now see it come up against GreenSheep's Jade Druid, which could potentially be quite an interesting matchup because they are card-for-card mirrors between the two Jade Druids.
Okay, who's drawing Wild Growth?
Yeah, I mean, Jade Druid is a very, very snowbally matchup. You know, as I was talking about in the Jade Druid versus Reno Lock match, you know, Druid is great at curving out and putting pressure on and just ramping up the stats on the board. They don't answer an opponent that's doing that same thing very well. It's why Dragon Priest, for example, can have a lot of success against them. So when it comes down to a Jade Druid mirror, it's almost always decided early on in the game as to who gets the big pressure turns down early.
Yeah, and in terms of the Rogue matchup, which is the one we're going to see Tarei on the Druid and GreenSheep on the Rogue for this game, what do you think of this? Because a lot of the time, Rogue can just go too quickly, and if Finja comes out to play, then again, that's just kind of too much for the Jade Druid to handle, unless they're already very ahead.
Yeah, classically, Rogue in general, Miracle Rogue, and even in the brief periods of time where it's been powerful, tempo and aggro-based Rogue decks have just been insane against Druid. One big factor, one caveat I will add to this, though, is a lot of that historical power from the Rogue has come down to the card Sap. It's just incredibly, incredibly powerful against Druid in general, and this new build of Tempo Rogue, the Finja Tempo Rogue, Finja Aggro Rogue, whatever you want to call it, does not play that card. So big taunts can be a massive roadblock to the Rogue.
Yeah, we're going to see if Tarei's going to be able to get those down. The opening hand here, Tarei taking his time in terms of his mulligan. Don't blame him at all. Does have the Jade Blossom, potentially even to combine with the Innovate, depending on what the other cards look like, but decides to just throw away the Azure Drake. And effectively swapping it for a Living Root, which versus a very aggressive deck.
Interesting.
Pretty okay.
That hand is great, but I'm not sure Tarei should be nodding and looking happy about how great that hand is, because these players are within 5 or 6 feet of each other right now, and the desk is curved in such a way that visibility is right there. We want these players to be able to see each other. Tarei may have just forgotten about that for a moment and just betrayed how good his mulligan was. But if you want a contrast of opening hands, One guy draws Innovate, Jade Blossom, and Fandral, and Living Roots, and a Wrath in a deck that's all about early board control. GreenSheep, on the other hand, is sat looking at his least favorite card, Patches.
Yeah, and even, okay, let's live in a world where Patches wasn't drawn. Look at the rest of the hand.
Yeah.
Backstab, not particularly amazing versus Jade Druid. The SI, yes, you can combine it with Backstab. If they play minions early, what if they ramp? It's not really going to do much. And then Bluegill Warrior, it's 2-mana deal, 2-1 charge. It's not going to be enough. You really just want your actual base minions to get onto the board early. Shaku, for example, is great as it can't be wrapped down on the turn it's played, and start stacking up that damage. And that, if anyone doesn't know, that card's called Wild Growth. It's a good Druid card. You should play that card if you build a Druid deck.
So many options.
Yeah, I was like, let's just think how you want to sequence this ramp.
Just Wild Growth means that he can Fandral, Innovate, Wrath, coin Living Roots on the following turn, which is a complete and utter blowout to any board state that GreenSheep can generate here. So that appears to be the line that's going to come down from Tarei. That opening hand has just kept getting better and better since the mulligan that he was already so pleased with.
Yeah, and look at this, GreenSheep just saying, well, I have to do something. The Argent Squire is one of the minions you would have been looking for turn 1, but for turn 3, Argent Squire hit face hero power was not going to be good enough. GreenSheep just saying, I've just got to play what I've got, make the most of it, and see how I can do anything going forward. Backstab SI 7 Agent is in hand, so there's 4 damage straight off the bat next turn, along with Patches if he really wants, as he'll have a mana spare.
If GreenSheep somehow finds a way this game, I'm just going to put this out there right now, he is confirmed the aggro god. Like that is just not up for debate anymore. If he can beat this hand with a start as slow as he had, then we just give him the crown.
Skip everything else. Tournament over. Done. Okay, so it's going to go Jade Blossom. It's going to go for a Coin Hero Power. So
Coin Hero Power, the 2-1, yeah.
Yeah, Tarei taking this a little bit slower, not going crazy onto the board, mainly because he just doesn't need to at this point. Just takes his time, and you never know. Already going to be going into 6 mana next turn. Still got Innovate available. If Ancient of War, for example, comes out, you can pop it out with the Living Roots. So this is absolutely nuts indeed that he's not even been forced to use these anti-aggro tools he has available to him already.
Yeah, and let's put this into further context. He's already ramped his mana to 6. He's already drawn a good chunk of his early game cards with 1 Wild Growth, 1 Jade Blossom, 1 Innovate, 1 Wrath, 1 Living Roots already drawn into his hand. That means the rest of his deck is very, very late game weighted. His late game is very strong at walling out this aggro deck. He has 2 Ancient of Wars and 2 Jade Behemoths that he can use to put big taunts in the way, and he has all the removal tools to back them up to make sure there isn't a significant board presence that can tempo through them with cards like Cold Blood and Murloc buffs.
Yeah, there's multiple options available now for Tarei. He can actually just go Jade Spirit, Wrath, the Murloc, the War Leader. Depends how afraid he's of leaving minions on the board due to cards like Cold Blood, but you're in such
I think it's Fandral time, man.
You want Fandral?
Yeah, I like that Wrath not cycling just bothers me. It feels like if you just dig through your deck here and hit an Ancient of War, this game is more or less over.
Sure.
So,
I mean, could actually, if you really wanted, just swipe Hero Power.
That's fine
yeah,
too.
I was going to say, that's actually just super clean. It doesn't develop a... okay, Wrath just beats us all. This shows how many options Tarei has got and how good his opening hand and his continued card draw has been. We've just went through multiple good options. He picked another one, which is just good as well. So looking pretty good for him so far. As your Drake into Backstab going to help GreenSheep a little bit in terms of cycle and helps him grab the board with the addition of the dagger.
Yeah, looking at it on reflection, Tarei wanted to hold the Fandral Wrath combination here for this Azure Drake. I think like him holding here is perfectly fine with me. I did not want to see that Wrath not used to draw a card, but Tarei just saw the Matrix a little bit better than even we did and got into this position where he's like, okay, my opponent's next turn can be Azure Drake. That's one of the most powerful things that he can do. Because of that, I'm going to hold back this Fandral Wrath combination to just shut that out completely as well.
Yeah, I'm going to use the Wrath, even though Feral Rage would be a little bit more mana efficient in general.
There we go.
Going to use the Wrath to draw, and why, even though you gain 8 armor, why take any damage at all if you don't really have to at this point? Just develop the Fandral. I don't think it's worth Living Roots to the face, although it would be kind of funny. But the Behemoth being available now is just making this very, very, very hard for GreenSheep to win this game, and this could potentially lose GreenSheep this series.
Yeah, it's the Norris draw.
Why not at this point in the game?
Could be the straw that breaks the camel's back in this spot.
Breaks the sheep's back.
Oh, beautiful. This is why you make the big bucks, Raven. Feral Rage now takes care of the Drake and picks up the 8 armor. This hand has been phenomenal from Tarei. I said it would be a minor miracle if GreenSheep finds a way to get through this incredible start. It does not look like that's going to happen. It looks like North America that's going to march on here, and the slightly downtrodden start to day 2 for Europe is going to continue.
Yeah, it looks to be. Tarei has been playing very solid. There's one mainly like strange moment throughout this whole series that we'll have to find out some words on later on, but overall very solid play from both players. It's just Tarei has seemed to just been getting the better of him on average in every matchup, and this Druid game has just been a joy to watch if you enjoy watching Druids crush.
So is there any way? GreenSheep clearly still believes he can fight for board dominance here. He didn't just want to commit to the face. The cold-blooded horse rider used to trade off here. Did you see any world, any small percentage where GreenSheep finds his way back into this,
I can't
Raven?
see a world past Tarei just closing his eyes and playing cards till he can hit end turn and still winning this game. He can Aya, Jade Blossom, Living Roots to 6-1, which looks to be the play. This is the play I was looking at before the start of the turn. This is straightforward. When you're not forced to play a taunt, when you're against an aggro deck, you just play everything else. You are in a fantastic position, even with Defender of Argus, even with Naga Corsair. There is swipe available for Tarei. He has all the options in the world. Nourish is still there if he needs to draw into anything else later on. This pretty much, I don't want to call it too early, but looks like a done deal to me.
I'll do it. I'll be the bad guy. This game is donezo. This game is 100% over right now. The 3-6 taunt comes down, putting the wall up even bigger. 6-6 Jade now being spawned. GreenSheep cannot find a way. This game is well and truly over. Tarei is going to march forward into our winner's game, and GreenSheep is going to be the man having to scrap it out in losers of Group C.
Yeah,
Group D, sorry.
GreenSheep knocked to the lower bracket, but more importantly, Tarei taking the win there. Very convincing performance, and as we said, both these players very experienced in this tournament overall, playing in most of the years it's even been running, and just a great series overall, and a little bit quicker than the last one we had on stream. We can check out the bracket and see what the group looks like overall. You can see Group C, LVG and Doc Pone in the winners section, Pavel and Yulsik in the elimination part of that, and I think we're checking Group D as well, maybe? No, we're not going to check Group D. We'll check that one out a little bit later on. So yeah, I believe Rachel is standing by with Tarei for some words on that series.
Thank you so much, guys, and thank you, Tarei. That was way quicker than the match before, you guys. Now, I know we had a chance to talk beforehand, and you said that you were actually looking forward to facing off against GreenSheep because you felt your deck lineup matched up against his pretty well. Did it all play out as expected?
Yeah, pretty much. It went pretty much as expected, so that was good.
And do you feel calm? Are you chill? Because you seem calm.
Yeah, I definitely feel way less nervous now than I did for prelims, so hopefully that continues.
Why is that?
I don't know, like I guess during prelims I was so nervous that I felt like really had to fix that, so I tried to really just calm myself and fix that problem.
Well, it worked out great for you. You're moving on, and we'll see more from you later on. But for now, let's go back to the games.